Hello, I'm Lisa.
I'm Cryss.
And this is a Knit Sheep Studio podcast for knitters and crocheters. How's that? I think I like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's going on this week? Well, weather-wise, we had 70 degrees yesterday. I was out in the park playing with my niece. No coats. And today it snowed ever so slightly. So that's how we're living weather-wise right now. Our niece is visiting, and Crystal has some strong feelings about that.
You know what? I've been usurped. Okay, that's all that happened. I'm the baby of the family, or so I thought, and then now my niece gets all kinds of special. We went to my uncle's house. Why he just slipped her $5 for no reason? I'm like, hey, I'm broke. Give me $5. But she didn't even ask. She didn't ask. It was just like, oh, here. And then Lisa makes her all kinds of special foods, and it's just like, oh,
It was not all kinds of special food.
that's okay. That's how we're doing things.
I made shrimp scampi
And
for
she'll
dinner.
be like, oh, she'll whisper to Rachel, oh, you want some tea? And I'm just like, I'd like some tea. How about asking the room, would anyone like some tea? I mean, that doesn't seem difficult. You're putting on the same water.
Well, as you can see, we had a moment up in this piece. But let me tell you the real story of dinner, because it sounds terrible the way Crystal's telling it, but that's not what actually happened. And P.S., you have to learn to get over being, at one point I was the baby.
Oh my God.
Just to tell you, you have to get over it.
So very long ago.
Okay? That's something you have to get over.
And you know what?
Because the babies just keep on coming.
Jessica's the one who spoiled that for you, not me. So. Technically
speaking,
you had already been out the spot for so long by the time I came along.
Oh my God. Okay. And we have no empathy for that. I just had to learn to cope, as you will. Anyway, I had made shrimp scampi for dinner, and Rachel was like, oh, I don't like shrimp. I was like, all right. I knew
she still loves shrimp. When did that happen?
I don't think she doesn't like shrimp. I think she just didn't feel like shrimp. And I knew we had some frozen pizzas in the freezer. So I was like, you want some pizza instead? And she was like, cool. So she ate the same garden salad everybody else ate. And she had pizza while we had a delightful homemade shrimp scampi. Including Crystal, who also had delightful homemade shrimp scampi.
I'm just saying.
I squeezed lemons with my bare hands.
Did I know there were options?
Did you want a frozen pizza instead of fresh shrimp scampi?
Pizza. I wanted to be offered options if there were options on the menu.
Yeah, there weren't. Let me just tell you.
Exactly.
There weren't any
because there's
on
one special person who has all the options, and then everyone else has none of the options. That's fine. That's right.
Okay, I'm glad it's fine.
But then she was offered fruit. I was offered enough fruit, and she was offered tea. I was offered tea. Oh, you want to talk about that? You want to talk about that? Because my mom goes to my niece like, "Oh, you want some mango?" And she's like, "No." And so I'm like, "Hello." And my mom's like, "Oh, you want it?" Because I get the leftovers, the leave-ins, the crumbs.
I would take leftover mango. Can I tell you? I didn't even get offered mango. So think about that.
I'm just saying, like, wow, there would have been no offer at all.
I didn't even get offered mango. So
I'm just saying.
Try those shoes on.
Some strong feelings. It's okay though.
Okay, try those shoes on. You got offered the leftover mango. I got offered 0 mango.
Okay, so I'm sorry, weren't you busy making Rachel her own special dinner?
And I did all the cooking.
As she watched Floor is Lava, which is terrible. Oh my God.
I love that show. It's hilarious.
Floor is Lava is like the worst thing ever. It's so silly. And it's just like, there's very little challenge to what other people are doing, but just enough for them to get hurt. And I think that was how the show was designed. It seems terrible. It's just like each leap or step is just that little bit too far out of reach so that they go thwack a lot. And I'm just like, look, this is terrible.
It's not exactly American Ninja Warrior.
And it's like the prize is $10,000 split among 3 people. And if you're growing up, you know that's not a lot of money. Like I read a quote once that said being an adult means knowing that $5,000 is not a lot of money to have, but it is a lot of money to owe.
Yep. That's about right.
So they're getting a third of $10,000, and it just doesn't seem worth it considering they're leaving with injuries. Because their copay is going to eat that up
A little bit.
if they have insurance. So
That one trip to the emergency room, there you go.
right? Like, don't get an X-ray.
I'm like, I can feel it. It's not broken. But anyway, so we've been playing with our niece this week. Consequently, I got very little knitting done. I'll tell you the truth.
I finished my sweater.
Oh, virtue.
I was just saying, look, I had to wait almost 2 weeks for my yarn to come from Denmark, so I'm very happy. She has a name now.
Oh, what is she?
So for the longest, she's just been Fuzzy Sweater. But Fuzzy Sweater was always a placeholder name.
Mm-hmm.
And I like my names to come from, like, I don't know, like each of my makes has like a story, right? And so now, instead of Fuzzy Sweater, she is the Tak Sweater, because Tak is thank you in Danish. And I owe Denmark my gratitude for sending me the 1 ball of mohair that I needed to finish my sweater.
The 1 ball of white mohair in all the world.
Right? It was really weird that I couldn't find any.
You know what? You got to give me a picture of you wearing the sweater so I can post it.
You talk about pictures a lot.
I know. You know, you're not even showing the sweater here finished.
It looks a lot like it did last week. You all saw it last week, like pinned, like I had stitch markers.
Well, you know, that's for people
it.
who didn't like subscribe
But
to
this
us
is
until
like
this week.
The finished sweater. I love these sleeves. I absolutely love
those are really
love my
nice.
sleeves. But you can see, like, I don't know, I feel like you can see a difference in the seam. So under the arm,
Okay, there we go. Okay. Oh yeah.
I did a slip stitch seam, but at the shoulder, I did what's it called? Mattress stitch.
Yeah.
And that's just much tidier. I didn't really care about the underarm that much because mattress stitch takes forever.
Now, honest to goodness, I did not know there was a crochet version of mattress stitch. How did you learn about it?
She didn't know it last week.
Because there is a real difference in how the seam looks.
Yeah, I knew that the slip stitch would make a bulkier seam, and this is a bulky stitch that I did. So at the shoulders and where I attached the sleeve, I did the mattress stitch so that it would be much less bulky and just a much smoother seam.
Absolutely.
But now she's got the edging along the front.
Oh, and you know what? You were talking about doing a little bit of an edging on the bottom too.
I just did a few rows of single crochet along the bottom edge.
That's really nice.
Nothing major. No buttons. I decided against buttons because I didn't want to do buttonholes. But it's cute. It's cozy.
You can do buttonholes on that after the fact? Or were you going to plan them in? Okay.
I didn't.
Into your edging on the front. Okay.
I mean, I could do one of those loop things if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. Like, no buttons.
I think it looks cute. The silhouette is really nice for an open jacket.
So I am incredibly happy with it. And it's cozy and it's comfy, and I guess every once in a while it'll be cold enough to wear something like this. I don't know, because 70 degrees in February. Yeah.
I went out and I had taken a hat with me because I didn't realize how warm it was. And I was like, oh, just in case it gets a little breezy, we're going to be out playing. Let me take a hat. I had to take that hat off and put it in my bag. And we're out there, no jackets, no nothing.
So technically, this is like my first finished object of the new year. I know some people, like when they show like, oh, everything I did in January, I'm like, oh, you were productive. Although some of the things people have made I find questionable, but we're not going to talk about it.
Okay. I was like, you know, we have been watching a lot of knitting and crochet podcasts. So we've been seeing some things. And that's a very popular video to do right now. Everything I made in 2021.
Yeah.
Or everything I made.
Like there are some people who like just took up crochet or knitting during the pandemic, and like their stuff, you know, all your beginner stuff is wonky, and you know, it was just fun to see because it was just like, I remember. Been there. Been there. And I think it's great that like even though like your stuff came out wonky, you have the confidence to say, hey, look, this is where I am as a stitcher right now, and look at what I made. But I would just like for all the crocheters to stop doing patchwork cardigans now. Because they get, each one is a little worse than the last. I just want to say something. The cardigan that Harry Styles wore was hideous. It was an absolute monstrosity. It didn't look good on him. So I don't understand how it inspired so many people to make versions of it, because it was a dreadful, dreadful garment. And so now there's a lot of dreadful, dreadful cardigans, patchwork cardigans all over YouTube. And I need it to stop now. I really do. I mean, it's one thing to jump on a trend, it's another thing to jump on a bad trend. Just like, what?
Or I would, if I was really going to make that cardigan, I would make a wearable version of it, you know, something that looked good and looked good on me.
And a lot of them have been made out of acrylic, not shading acrylic. It's where we all start, but that's going to be so heavy, and sometimes you can see when the person's holding it up,
it's pulling itself down.
Just it's so weighty, and I'm just like, you can't actually wear that. And I'm like, are we really putting in that much time to things that we cannot wear?
Because that was something we saw on one of the podcasts. This woman was really joyfully, she had just learned how to make sweaters, and she was joyfully crocheting these sweaters, but she hated them. And part of the problem, I think what happened, and it happens to all of us, so I'm not really like mad at her or anything. When we first discover yarn, we get really excited. And
all you care about is the color.
Yeah, you only care about the color, and you buy up. Don't get a coupon at Michael's or Joann's, because we are coupon queens from those places. You know, a 60% off coming in on email or in a text was reason to saddle up and ride. But sometimes you just buy so much of that yarn, and as you discover, like once you start making garments, you're like, you discover, oh, this might not have been the one.
Not everything is suitable for a garment.
No.
Learn that the hard way.
Yeah, we all do. We all do. And I think she's in the process of learning that.
Because at least 3 sweaters, she said, I think I'm going to rip this out. And
yeah.
It's just like, after all that work, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's something to think about when you want to make, if you're a garment maker in particular, you really want to consider the yarn and
that was like such a common beginner mistake. And watching like a lot of the videos where people just started yarn choice. Yarn choice was always like an issue. And I'm like, what can we do differently so that we can help even beginners make better choices? Because you want to start with what you can afford.
Yep.
Like, no lie. But if you're going to use acrylic, you have to know what to make with it.
Right.
And
even as a yarn store owner, if somebody walked in and they're all excited to learn to knit or crochet, I would steer them towards my less expensive yarn. You know why? Unless they really had their heart set on something, if you take it up and you discover you didn't really like knitting or crochet, at least you didn't invest so much. I would steer them towards my less expensive yarns, still nice stuff, but not pocketbook breakers. And my least, matter of fact, I brought in some super inexpensive needles and hooks just for people who want to try it out, so that you didn't, plunk down $20 for one needle, or $15 for one hook, plus another $30 or $40 worth of yarn, and discover, this really isn't for me. But then you feel like, I spent all this money, because you can literally spend any amount you want on your tools and your material. So if I was going to be advising a new knitter or a new crocheter, I would steer them towards a wool or wool blend that can be had at a very inexpensive price.
Wash.
A super wash, so that if you make a mistake, if you make a mistake and just throw it in the washing machine or the dryer, it'll still be okay. Light colors. Because if you're like me and you're drawn to super saturated colors, like this plum and this navy blue, that's not a good place to start, because you have to be able to see the stitches and you won't be able to see them. You don't even know what a stitch looks like at first, and you won't be able to see them on such dark colors. I think that would be my top 3 pieces of advice to a beginner. Otherwise, have a lot of fun. Don't buy up all the acrylic because it's on sale. You can get it for $2 a ball.
Not that I've ever done that.
Not that I've ever done that. You come home with a garbage bag full. Okay.
No, that's never happened. We did not send a bunch of garbage bags full of yarn to Goodwill recently. That did not happen.
That did not happen.
Because I think some of it, as a matter of fact, there was this yarn that was discontinued. It was the Karen Simply Soft Light. So it was a DK version of Karen Simply Soft. And I bought scads. I don't know how much. I bought so much of it at like, it might have been $2 a ball or something like that. And then like the day after I bought it, it got marked down again, $1.50 a ball. And I called down. No, I called Hirschner's and I got a credit.
Oh no.
I got the price adjusted. They took off the 50 cents for each one I bought. And so I had yarn at $1.50 a ball that I didn't want to use.
And it wasn't that you didn't use it. You did use it for quite some time. But
Mom got more use because Mom made a blanket out of it.
Yeah.
But
isn't that what you made that dress out of that tried to kill you?
No, that wasn't. Oh. That was from a dollar bin, honey, and I had a coupon.
Oh, Lord,
so that was 75 cents. That was like some of like my best yarn shopping ever, because it was 25%. So AC Moore used to have $1 yarn bin. Everything was $1 in the bin, and that was the full price. So all those coupons that were a percentage off of full price items, you could use that on the dollar bin. So I got $1 yarn, and then I had a 25% off full price items.
Even they didn't want that stuff.
So I got my yarn for 75 cents, made a dress, wore it to the wedding.
A cute dress
got
too.
A lot of compliments on it. But that wedding was like in March. And I tried to wear that dress again in July and nearly died. Like literally, I thought for a moment, I really thought I was going to lose consciousness.
But can I say something? She never said a word during the party.
Let me tell you.
We weren't even that far from home. We
home. It wasn't a party. We were at a yarn store, as a matter of fact. You were looking for an issue of pom-pom.
Oh, good Lord.
And
I thought that was what you wore to
I wore it to the wedding
party.
No, the Sweet 16?
Yeah.
No, I made another hideous acrylic dress.
Oh, okay. That was a different dress. Okay. That dress was not hideous. Everybody loved that dress.
It was the wrong yarn. Again,
it was the wrong yarn.
It was the wrong yarn. It was worsted weight, and it was just too... I wore it proudly, but like the next day I was like, what was I thinking?
If you run into some sort of medical trouble, please don't do like she did and keep silent
about it.
Let
me tell you what had happened though, because Lisa was inside the store and they have like a big front glass window. So even though it was air conditioned with the sunlight streaming in, the store was still a little warm. So I was like, okay, let me go to my car and start my air conditioning. But my car is a hoopty, and the air conditioning takes a long time before it actually cools off. So I was sitting in the car waiting for the air conditioner to cool down. And that's when, I hit the danger zone. And I was like, okay, do I sit here and wait for the AC, or do I try to make my way back inside to where Lisa is to tell her? Because I wasn't sure at that time that I could walk. I was parked directly in front of the store. I want to be very clear.
Oh
so
God.
It was just been a few feet. And at that point, I didn't know if I could make it because I was so hot, and it just like I wasn't cooling off because of the acrylic. I didn't know what people meant by acrylic doesn't breathe. I found out the hard way. And I remember, like, I don't know if it's a real story or if it's urban legend or whatever, but there's some story like from like the 1800s about a woman being killed by her corset.
Oh.
And I remember sitting in the car thinking, I think that story's true now. And like, you know when you think you're gonna die and you have weird random thoughts? That's what came to me. I was thinking about this. I was like, I bet she did get killed by her corset because I'm about to be killed by my acrylic dress. So
well, all right.
Yarn choice.
The mind wobbles.
But then the AC did actually start cooling off eventually, and I was feeling better, and we made it home. But it was touch and go there for a minute. So yarn choice, it turns out, is not just, about aesthetics. It can be a matter of life or death.
That's right. The yarn you choose may save your life.
So yeah, I have not. Right now, I still have some acrylic in my stash that I like, but I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out what would I make out of this? What would be like the smart play? Because I don't ever want to feel that hot again. And I don't know. I haven't figured out what to do with the acrylic. I was just looking because I have an acrylic. It's kind of like a tape yarn, and I'm like, I like tape yarns, but I'm like,
and you know what?
That's not going to be a sweater.
I've hardly ever met a novelty yarn I didn't like, but I don't actually use them. If it's got like flowers woven into it, or it's a little bit hairy in odd spots, that will attract my attention. And I will come home with some of it.
I have this yarn that looked like kind of like shag almost. It was just like, after a while, it was just like one day it was like, what are you doing with this? Yeah. Like I was trying to put myself back in the headspace I was in when I bought it, because
like, what was I thinking exactly?
Yeah. Like, what did I think I was going to do with it?
Yeah.
When I bought it.
And I am one of those people who will buy yarn on an impulse. Like, oh, I like that.
I'm sorry, who's not one of those people?
No, but some people are real disciplined about it. Unless they have a project, they're not buying the yarn.
People come in the yarn store with their little notebook or whatever, their list of projects. They would bring patterns with them, and they would buy yarn for those patterns. And when they left, I'd be like, freak.
In the nicest way possible.
Like, who's doing that? Like,
yeah, I always was like amazed by that, because wow, no, I would see a color and couldn't think of anything else, and I would leave with a handful of it. And it took me a while.
You leave with one skein of it.
Yeah, it took me a while to learn not to leave with one skein of it.
What are you gonna do with it? Well, you make socks, so at least you have something you can do with. Mm-hmm. I don't make socks, so I do a lot of stripes. Yeah. Because then I can work in those various single skeins.
Yeah. But as you learn more color work techniques, you can use up your single skeins better.
Intarsia.
This is version 2. Dun dun dun.
Look at that. Do you see that? Do you see my little checkerboard thing happening? This is going to be a sweater vest. And I could not be any more excited about it. I had
super cool.
3 like color blocks here. So before it was the purple, and then the multi in the middle, and then the purple. Not only was that like super dull, but this purple yarn is a completely different yarn, and it works up at a different gauge. And so I had some issues. So I thought I needed to like intersperse the purple yarn with the main yarn, so that it's kind of getting pulled into the shape that I need it to be. Yeah, but I also think this is just more interesting just because my post stitches are giving me kind of like a vertical feel, but then checkerboard's got this horizontal thing happening, and I think that's just so much more interesting to look at.
Yes, I agree.
I love it. I absolutely, it's a sweater vest, and it's coming on. So right now, the placeholder name is Purple Vest, but I don't know what it's going to be actually called. By the time I finish it, I'll have decided on a name. But I'm learning Intarsia. And so I do have like, I've been thinking about doing like a patchwork inspired type of garment, but I want mine to be nice. But you know, one of the things, seaming things is difficult. And when it is a new skill, your seams will be hideous. That is just a fact of life.
That's just how life
And so a
works.
lot of the cardigans, they weren't Intarsia. They were individual squares. They were motifs. So they were individual squares that were seamed together. And so a lot of them had like big visible seams. I think particularly for a nice regular pattern, like a checkerboard kind of thing, Intarsia is ideal. And so that's what I will be doing. But I'm still playing around with where I want to place the squares, and I'm maybe doing some things with squares that are different sizes and whatever. So I don't have a design in mind just yet, but I think I know which yarn I'm going to use. And I'm definitely going to make it an Intarsia garment because I'm not scared of Intarsia anymore.
Yeah.
I'm still scared of Fair Out, but I'm not scared of Intarsia is the important thing.
You know what? Take a look at Versailles Pattern brickwork. That might be an inspiration that you can use in your fast when you're talking about different size squares, how they juxtapose. It's a nice, interesting pattern.
So this should go pretty quickly. And last week, you'd asked me if I was going to do the color work on the back. And until she asked me, I'd intended to do the color work on the back. But then I was like, I don't have to. I can just not do the color work on the back.
Exactly.
The back is just going to be plain, and all the fun, interesting parts going to be in the front where I can see it. So this should go pretty quickly, hopefully.
Now, you had talked about earlier in the year instead of doing a make 9, do a learn 9. Have you thought about that at all?
Intarsia, check.
Check. That's number 1.
So
I'm actually working on Intarsia now too in my sock. I haven't really done much Intarsia before. Like I knew the theory of it, but I had not actually done it.
I feel like that's true a lot about you. You know a lot of. She reads so much about knitting. She knows all the theory.
I do. I do read a lot about knitting.
Are you gonna like design a sweater?
I'm thinking about it.
It's a shame that that Bellish app closed because that sounded like something that people found very useful with regard to designing sweaters.
But you know what? I think I am just going to use my book from Melissa Liebman.
Oh, 6,000 plus pullover possibilities.
Yes. Because what that book does, it tells you how to make individual sweater parts that you can put together into a sweater in a variety of sizes. So I might come up with some sweaters of my own that way. At least to start with, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I see why you're doing a lot of your own design because it's harder to find cool sweater patterns in crochet than it is for knitting. But I don't feel super pressed to design my own.
I think now
because there's so many.
There are a few more options. You know, Ravelry has helped so that people from all over the world and people who are not, you know, publishing books can still make their patterns accessible to people. But one of the things that, like, you know, I just like things to be very regular. And when you work from a book, all the patterns are written in the same way. So you make one thing from that book, you know, you'll be able to follow instructions for basically any of the other things in that book. But when every designer is doing their own thing, you know, from one pattern to the next, if you buy, you know, patterns from Ravelry, people are using different terminology. People are explaining things in different ways. Some patterns, like it's 2 pages and like best of luck to you. Some patterns it's like 25 pages and you fall asleep reading it. So I was frustrated by that process of just looking for different things, but then finding everything completely different from one designer to the next. Well, that's one of the reasons Ravelry doesn't necessarily work for me. I'm always surprised when I watch people's YouTube channels. Most people seem to be getting their patterns from Ravelry, and a lot of people on YouTube are making each other's patterns.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how few crocheters, it seems to be, are using patterns from books. And I love books. I love that it's all bound. I like that. I like having my little my glossary and my key, and sometimes in the back of the book they'll explain different techniques, and I don't know, I like the pattern books more so than digital. I like having a lot of designs from one person. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it will make for some uniformity.
Yeah.
And see, I'm exactly the opposite. I like having the possibilities. I love that Ravelry is a database, so that if I know what I want, basically, I can say, only show me sleeveless sweaters that use somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 yards of yarn in DK weight, and show me stripes.
Well, like, I just went on Ravelry and I chose as like one of the attributes Intarsia.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was only like one page of results. There were like really, really few patterns, and a couple of them were ones I was already familiar with. One I have in a book that was the reason I wanted to learn Intarsia in the first place. It's a patchwork cardigan, but the options were so limited, and I don't know if I needed to I use one of the attributes on the side. I don't know if I put it in as a keyword instead, if I would have gotten more things. But I was really surprised to see so little crochet Intarsia. I was thinking to myself, there has got to be more than this out there.
Yeah. Look on Etsy. For whatever reason, there's a lot more crochet designers on Etsy doing their thing.
Because I really feel like, now that I understand the technique a little bit, I just want to see what can be done with it.
Right.
Because I don't know all the ins and outs of Intarsia, and I just want to have an idea of what people are using it for, and really like why you would use Intarsia instead of Fair Isle or vice versa. That's one thing that I have in my mind right now, because I have another a top that I want to make, and I'm thinking I need to do Fair Isle for that top, but I'm like, I don't know.
Is it a continuous pattern?
So it's going to be a zigzag.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so this, 1 second, this vest, when I, stopped here, right?
Mm-hmm.
This string was waiting for me. So when I stopped with the main color and then I went to the purple, this main color string was waiting for me. So when I turned around, I could just pick it up and go back because I was doing a regular shape.
Right.
If I'm not doing something that is just like a square or a rectangle, would I still use Intarsia? I'm thinking I would want to do Fair Isle instead, so that I can weave in and out and drop the other color in anywhere I need it.
Well,
otherwise you have to pull your string far or something.
Yeah, or have more, or just add another string.
Yeah,
that's how I would do it. And that's how I would do it as a knitter. I just add as many strings as I need to.
Because let me tell you, working with I've always hated being attached to more than one ball of yarn at a time. So when I did stripes, I really hated carrying the yarn up the side. Why? Because now you're stuck with these 2 balls of yarn. So this was my first time working with 3 attached balls of yarn. And I mean, I did manage to keep them from getting tangled, but it was effortful. It was something that I kind of stressed about as I was working. And if more than 3.
Well, that's why I eliminated the balls altogether in my project. And that sounded bad, but
that's where I was though. I'm just speaking the truth here.
If I run out of yarn, I'll just tie on some more yarn and then keep on keeping on.
Like with the knot?
With a magic knot, yeah. It's small, unobtrusive, and it stays put.
I'm gonna have to see about this magic knot business, because at the moment I'm not a believer. And I don't like having.
Let me tell you, eliminating the balls just made it so much easier.
But like I said, you're still limited to the length.
No, because I just tie on more as needed. I have an infinite supply.
Okay.
My supply is infinite.
But you're still working on something really small. Like that dark gray yarn that you do in your designing, you don't need a lot of.
But I'm going to be having, at least 12 yarn sources by the time the sock is finished.
Are you kidding me?
No.
That sounds like
you can tie on as much as you want.
Nightmare?
No, but as long as you don't have balls dangling underneath, they're not going to keep swinging and tangling and all of that. If the yarn is just laying there with nothing on the end, that weight on the end was an issue. Mm-hmm. It's not the yarn itself. It's the weight of the yarn. That's why the bobbin didn't work for me. And that's why working from a butterfly didn't work for me. Because it all bundled up the yarn and magnified the weight.
I still have a lot to explore in the realm of Intarsia. And I'm going to have to figure out, like, how I like to work if I'm going to do, more colors or more intricate things. Mm-hmm. And the same thing if I'm going to do Farrow, I'll be attached to multiple balls of yarn. I'm still checking it off my list, though, my Learn 9. Because I did it. I made a thing with Intarsia, so it totally counts. But yeah, I have to see about this working from the tangle business and then tying on and magic knots and you're saying a lot of words I don't like.
Wow. It's not like that. It's not like that at all.
But we'll see. We'll see. But right now,
this is an example of Versailles Pattern. And if you pop that in colors, that would be kind of amazing. Let me show you guys. Because I'm showing Crystal like we're all by ourselves.
Yeah.
So she was going to do another garment with a pattern of squares. This is called the Versailles Pattern. And, it's from the bricks, how the bricks were laid at the Palace of Versailles in France. And I may be mispronouncing that. If I am, sorry. But popping those in different colors would give you a lot of interest. But you might want to tie on, several yarn sources, like one yarn source for each square. That's how I want to do it. So how's your sewing going?
Sewing is on pause right now because I have to buy elastic.
Oh, you didn't get the elastic yet?
I haven't gotten the elastic yet. I don't know. I felt like I needed a breather. And then my yarn came and all I cared about was finishing that sweater. Right. Like nothing else mattered.
But so far you installed the strings, which was a modification. Yeah. If you did, that was amazing.
But
the skirt is done except for...
Did I tell y'all I have the hole? I don't know if I mentioned that.
Yes, the Grand Canyon hole.
It is. It's the biggest hole there's ever been ever.
Okay, I would like you to take a picture of the hole so I can post that so people can see the enormity of this hole.
But just one day I picked it up, the skirt, after I'd already been working on it. So the panels are sewn together. And, the only fix for that is to start all over again. And I did buy enough yarn to do, not yarn, fabric. I did buy enough fabric to do that, to start the skirt all over again. But not for something like that. I was going to start all over again. Remember, if the sewing machine burst into flames and my fabric burnt up, but not for but it's like in the middle, like
sewing machines do that.
And I don't know if I did it. I don't know if the fabric was already like that. I have no idea when or how the hole happened. I feel like some sort of little sewing demon came in the night and just poked a hole in my fabric for no reason. So right now it's got like a anti-fray fabric glue kind of thing holding it together. I think at some point I'm gonna just do some sort of little embroidery something, or ask someone to do a little embroidery something on it to cover the hole, because right now I just cannot face the prospect of making the skirt all over again, because y'all have no idea what a stress case I was when I was working on this skirt.
Y'all really don't.
From everything from like cutting out the fabric to putting the winding the bobbin, threading the machine, just every little thing, that every step that I had to do was just another opportunity for me to lose my crap. Okay, so just be very clear. This was like, for me, crocheting, it's a very peaceful process. It's very relaxing. And even like my sweater, my tack sweater, I realized I didn't know how to decrease in pattern, but I felt confident that I could figure that out. And it took me like an hour, 15 minutes playing around with a swatch. And I figured out how to do my decreases. And it was fine. Like, for me, when that came up, it didn't even seem like, I don't know, it didn't seem like an obstacle. It was just like, oh yeah, I forgot I need to figure out how to decrease in pattern. And I just did it. I'd have none of that confidence when it comes to sewing. So every step was just like, like in a movie, you see people walking through a haunted house. That's what I felt like. I felt like I was walking through a haunted house and I was waiting for something to jump out at me. I was waiting for the floorboards to give away. I was ready for my flashlight to go out. So I'm in pitch black. That was what the process was like for me. So the idea of doing all of that again after you survive, it's like you survive the first movie and then you show up for the sequel. Like, I know we're not doing that.
Like, why would I go back there?
So, I'm taking a little breather from the skirt. I will finish it. All I have left to do now is put in the elastic in the waistband. I just have to order some. But yeah, I almost have a skirt. So, but yeah, the hole really threw me for a loop.
Okay, I'm gonna have Crystal take a picture of this hole, and you guys will see.
But you're not going to get the full impact because it is like a little tacked together now.
The absolute Grand Canyon of a hole.
It was a gaping abscess. It was just like, that's what it was. It was an abscess in my skirt.
It was not an abscess.
Okay, it was like, it was the black hole, and it was just sucking all of my joy into it.
You ever want to show somebody something and you go, okay, when I move my finger, you look. You'll see it. I'm going to move my finger.
Could you see the hole? Mom could see the hole. Mom fixed the hole because she could see the hole because there was a hole. And like, I just think about it for a moment. Your first ever sewing project, and it's going, but like, that's it, right? It's going. And then one day you show up to work on it, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a hole in. Can you just imagine what that felt like? So yes, I felt like the hole was big enough for me to fall into. I did. Turns out it was just big enough for my soul.
Oh. Wow. That wasn't dramatic. You are ready for your close-up.
But, I'm persevering. It's going to be fine.
You are never going to tell me I'm the dramatic one ever again. That was high drama right there.
Oh my God. She so is. It's just what you just saw. Imagine me calling her the dramatic one. That should tell you. Okay. That should tell you what we're dealing with over here. But yeah, so sewing's just on pause right now. But like, when I think about my goal for sewing, I want to get to where I am as a crocheter. So I want to be able to just like have my own idea and execute that idea. So understand all of the steps that are required to go from whatever's in my head to a thing that I can wear. Because right now, when it comes to crochet, that's what I'm able to do. And I still have a lot to learn. There's still so much more I want to be able to do as a crocheter. So I just plan to continue learning, but I realize that as I really want to make clothes now. That's what I discovered about myself. And I'm not going to make everything with crochet. Okay. Like, you know what? Sometimes I want there to already be fabric. Yes. Like, I don't want to have to build the fabric stitch by stitch. So I just want to have this other option for making clothes. But it just seems like such a chasm between where I am as a crocheter and where I am as a sewer. Now, granted, I've been crocheting for a few decades now. So there's a reason for that. Yes. But it's still just like, that's just my motivating thought, like to get myself to where I am as a crocheter. So are you counting sewing as part of your Learn 9? Yeah, because the learning, all the learning. The curve. The curve. So yes, once I have a finished skirt, I can say sewing was a thing I learned. Great.
I am going to learn mosaic knitting next because I'm working on some Intarsia now. My next technique that I'm going to tackle to just practice is mosaic, just so I have a lot of options for color work as I go along.
Yeah, I need to build a color work, repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like mosaic. I did a mosaic crochet hat last year, and I don't like mosaic, so we got to move on to some other things.
I'm going to be. I just got incepted. I was watching this.
Does everyone know what we mean when we say incepted?
Oh,
if you haven't seen the movie Inception, the idea is that they were going to do a thing that was, unheard of, like most people couldn't do, which was apparently you could sneak into someone's head and collect information, but you couldn't plant an idea in someone's head. And the main character had done that once and it ended very badly and he never wanted to do it again, but then he took a job doing just that.
Yes.
So he was putting a thought in a specific person's mind, and now we refer to getting an idea from someone as being incepted.
Yeah.
So just to, because I feel like we use it a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe if you haven't seen the movie, you don't get the reference. So she was incepted
by this podcaster whose podcast is called Nugget Bar. Now, she doesn't do all her podcasts in English. She does them mainly in Korean, but she started doing them in English. And I watched one of her English podcasts, and she made this pressed flowers shawl by Amy Christophers. And I was looking at that shawl and I was like, I really, really like that shawl.
It's very cute.
I love it. And we had talked about it months ago in Sit and Stitch. So I was like, it's back again. It's clamoring at me to make it. And I want to incorporate some shawls into my wardrobe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to be doing that as part of my learning, so that I will have done a Fair Isle project this year, an Intarsia project, and a mosaic project. So I'll be doing, several different color work techniques.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Fair Isle as well, but
you were scared of Intarsia, and Intarsia turned out to be I can do this. I think Fair Isle is going to be the same for you.
I feel like it's very hard with tapestry crochet to cover that yarn that you're carrying.
Mm-hmm.
So I would prefer to do Fair Isle where, that carry is hidden in the back and
mm-hmm.
it floats. But it is a judgment call as to when you pick up that yarn and trap it. And that's going to drive me nuts.
Well, just make a rule for yourself.
Yeah.
You know what? The rule of thumb in knitting is you never carry yarn, make a float longer than 1 inch. And an inch, they usually say around 5 stitches. Pick a number and stick with it.
Yeah.
Or better yet, alternate that number each row. So 3 and 5, 3 and 5, so that the float lines won't line up, because that makes them more visible. So you want to do it like you're laying bricks.
You see all of that stuff that you got to think about, and that.
But once you fall into the rhythm of it,
mm-hmm.
it's just there for you.
And then I have to worry about tension, and so if I'm making a garment and something that I need to have a certain fit, I have to worry about not pulling in my work too much.
You do your swatch Fair Isle too, so you see what happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I can tell you, look, and I know most of the patterns are going to tell you, oh, just do a swatch and stockinette. I'm so glad I didn't do that for my Christmas sweater, because my sweater would have been stiff as a board. Because I did my swatch in the round. I cast on enough stitches in the round for 4 inches, 8 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And I knit that swatch in the round, and I did 2 repeats of the Fair Isle. And then I ran that puppy through the washing machine and the dryer, as I planned to do the sweater. And my Fair Isle portion was stiff as a board. It went but I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't. And a lot of people are going to show you that speed Fair Isle technique too. I didn't do that because I haven't done a lot of fair out, and I think that technique will give you truer gauge for a person who's done a lot of fair out. So I just knit a tube, and I was glad I did. And those are the type of things you want to consider when you, because we were just talking about that at fair at Sit and Stitch too, that sometimes your swatches lie, and it wasn't that the swatch was lying. It might have been that you did the garment a different way than you did the swatch. So you didn't swatch for that particular garment you made, you know? So,
yeah. And then that's going to require a chart.
You can't be scared of charts.
I'm not scared of charts, but like, I don't know. Except for that mosaic pattern, and that chart was a freaking nightmare.
Yeah, the fair patterns aren't like that.
I don't think I've ever worked on a chart because I don't do color work.
Yeah.
So there's going to be like a whole lot of firsts.
So you know what?
Just doing like one fair out project.
Maybe your part of your Learn 9 will be learning to work with fair out charts. And maybe you should make that a separate little project in of itself. So do something small first that has a fair out chart before you tackle a whole sweater. No? Okay. That looked like that's a no for me though.
like if I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah, no, I don't like really jump in like that.
Yeah. No, I know you do like 7 swatches and you read books and
I don't do 7
your
swatches.
pattern like comes with a bibliography. It's like, whoa. She means business.
You see how she did me?
I'm just saying to watch it is fascinating.
I feel like a specimen now. Like
it's just a different way to work. It's just like, oh, okay, that's one way to go about it.
Well, you're doing what again now?
But no, it's cool.
You hear it? Okay, I see. I see it all too clearly now. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys. I was involved in a Yarn Store Owners panel at Vogue Knitting last weekend. It was super fun. What it was basically was, what was it called? The Community Stash. And apparently they're doing it every Vogue Knitting now. We talked about what it was like how we got started in a yarn store business, what our culture was like at our yarn stores. And it was one of the things that came up in the conversation was that, you know, so many people did not have that. Some people have that yarn store experience because there was yarn stores close to them. But so many people did not have that yarn store experience. And 2 of us are doing online yarn stores now and trying to create yarn store culture in a virtual setting. One woman, though, we were all like kind of amazed. She started her store 5 months ago, mid-pandemic, and has been kind of holding space for physical gatherings the whole time, which I think is kind of amazing. So I would love to know from you guys, how important is like gathering in person to you? You know, do you think that you could have that experience of community in a virtual way and it would still be satisfying, or would you only be happy with like getting together in person? Because that's a big deal for a lot of people.
I'm not one of them.
I know you're not. I know you are absolutely
I just
not.
want to do my work. I just want to stitch, and if I'm stitching with other people or stitching by myself, it's really all the same to me. Again, you know, we weren't yarn store people, so I almost feel like I don't really get it.
You know what? To be honest, I didn't know yarn stores existed growing up. It was just not a thing.
Yeah, Lisa led people in a reminisce about Woolworth.
It was so funny. But they asked, what was your yarn story? How did you come to fiber? So I told them about how, when we were growing up, we got our yarn at Woolworth's.
And everyone was like,
oh my God, I remember Woolworth's.
Yes.
And I did not realize I'd be taking people back like that. And we had a whole conversation about the wonders and joys of shopping at Woolworth's. But there was just literally no yarn store landscape for me. So I just had no idea that these things, I started discovering them when I started knitting as an adult. And I heard, oh, there's yarn stores. I was like, really? So I would look online and see where, because my old job, I would be going out all over the city. And wherever I would happen to be that particular day, I would look online and I'd Google first to see, are there any yarn stores in this area? And I would make it a point to drop in when I was done working and see what was going on in these yarn stores. But, I never found one where I could make that my yarn store home. I had one experience. I had just started knitting, and like Mike said, I didn't invest a whole lot of money in yarn or tools when my first project. So I was actually carrying around the little project I was working on, and I had this beautiful raspberry colored acrylic yarn. And the owner of the store I was in saw my yarn. She was like, oh, that's beautiful. And she was like, oh, what yarn is that? And I was like, oh, I didn't know what brand it was because it was super cheap, but the color was beautiful. And I said, oh, it's something acrylic. And she literally went and took 2 steps back from me. And she didn't talk to me anymore after that. So I was like, oh, okay. I did not know that one did not discuss one's acrylic in the yarn store. But it's so pervasive, that attitude, though, because even at Sit and Stitch, when we were doing it in person, people would be, at first, they were hesitant to say, to bring yarn that they got someplace else. But honestly, when we started Sit and Stitch, we had just opened. If I forbid people from using yarn they got someplace else at Sit and Stitch, nobody could come because, we had just opened. So over time, we got people comfortable just talking about what their yarn was, what they were doing with it. And it didn't matter whether or not you had bought the yarn at our store. And I didn't know that was a thing too. Just learning the rules of yarn store culture was an education.
I'm trying to figure out where to place my neckline. And I don't know if I'm going to have to just rip out the part I just did.
Oh, why?
Because I might want to make this section narrower.
Oh.
We'll see. I'll figure that out later.
See, she designs on the hook. And I know I wouldn't be comfortable doing that.
With your anarchist soul.
I don't have. You think I have an anarchist soul?
Be ready to just pick up needles and be like, oh, I don't even know what I'm making. Just.
I am not Mom. I don't just start stitching. The yarn tells me what it wants to be. Mom is famous. That's Mom's famous last words. Well, what's she making? She goes, I don't know. The yarn's gonna tell me. And I'm like, oh.
So okay. I'm very surprised.
I would have a sketch, and I would have decided what the neckline was going to look like first. I would not have a bibliography. She'd have
like a list of videos with all the techniques she's going to do, and she'd have like a thesis written before she did the first stitch. It's just fascinating.
It's not that complicated.
It's just fascinating to watch. Is all it is. Because I do like the bare minimum, but as far as like a sketch and just measuring my swatch or whatever, but then I'm like off to the races. I'm so focused on the end game. I want to make and wear my thing, and that's really all I care about.
So let me ask you guys: do you guys wear what you make? Because a lot of people don't seem to wear what they make. That's the other thing with me too. I'm when I'm making the thing, I'm already figuring out, oh, I'm going to wear this and I'm going to wear it with this that I already have, or I need to buy something to wear this with. That's kind of where I'm at.
I wear all my stuff.
Yeah, she does. She wears all her stuff.
It's very exciting. It's very gratifying. And I'm gonna tell you the truth. When someone looks at me and says, "Did you make that?" And I'm like, "Yeah," but inside I'm like, "You're damn right, I did." I love it. I absolutely love it. I know it's very immature of me, but it's such a thrill.
But yeah, I think wearing what you make is the whole point of making. So I can't imagine.
It's not for some people. Like, some people do a lot of like making for other people and giving stuff away, and it's great to have like a charitable spirit. But just the time that I spend, I feel very like
invested.
I was gonna say possessive of like each make. I don't know. I don't know about. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm always talking to Lisa about the Boyfriend Sweater Curse because I watch a lot of movies, and there are a lot of movies wherein people are trying to figure out how to thwart curses. Like, Final Destination, like, oh, New Life thwarts death. I still didn't like how they resolved that in that particular movie, but we won't get into that. But people spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to thwart curses. So I guess I do, like, I it's like a game I play with myself. Like, oh, if I watch a movie, I'm like, oh, how would I try to get around that curse or that whatever, right? So I'm always like saying, Lisa, well, oh, do you think this or that would work for the Boyfriend Sweater Curse? But I feel like I'm just never gonna have that issue because I don't see me making a sweater. I don't think that's gonna be a problem. Like, you might could get a scarf.
I am very rigid about the Boyfriend Sweater Curse.
She is.
It is a boyfriend sweater curse. If you make a sweater for your boyfriend, by the time that sweater is done, the two of you will have broken up already.
Now, let me tell you, I said, well, what if you have a friend and like just strictly a friend, and you make him a sweater, and then he becomes your boyfriend? And she said, if you make him a sweater, he's never going to become your boyfriend. That's how like serious he is about the curse. But I don't think that's, implied by the terms, because he's not your boyfriend when you make the sweater. And she said, well, okay, but then no more sweaters until you're married.
Yep.
So that might be a way to like work around the curse, but he has to really not be your boyfriend.
Yeah. And I don't think you can't use a sweater to entice him.
Why not?
Because you're going to break up.
No, as long as he's not your boyfriend until after he receives the sweater, I think that's fair play.
If you're thinking that hard about him for the amount of time it takes to make a man's sweater.
No. What if he was in a car accident and was convalescing, and you were thinking about him because, you worried about your ill friend, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to make him a sweater to cheer him up.
You remember that movie with Sandra Bullock? I'm terrible with movie names. Where she fell in love with this man who was in a coma. She saved him on the train track.
But then she fell in love with his brother.
Oh, is that what happened? Never mind. Maybe.
Wait, what was your point?
You know what? It's gone now.
Okay.
But what do you guys think? Is there a way to thwart the boyfriend sweater curse so that if you make this guy a sweater prior to the time you guys are in a relationship, I don't know why you would, but all right, prior.
Because he's a good friend.
He's a good friend. Great friend. But we know how we feel about our yarn and our
What if you're just friends and then he donates you a kidney? You got to thank him with a sweater.
Oh, yeah. He'd get a sweater for that.
So that would be a way that he wouldn't be your boyfriend, but still be a person who gets a sweater.
Okay.
It could happen.
It could happen.
And then I thought, well, how about a sweater vest? I feel like if it doesn't have sleeves, it shouldn't trigger the curse, but she's very strict about this.
If it's a full body garment, maybe a hat would be fine. A hat, a scarf.
It has no sleeves.
I think even socks.
Because it won't be worn alone. It'll have to be worn over another top.
But it covers your heart.
I don't think that has anything to do. See, now you're just making things up.
I'm just saying, it's a garment. I think accessories, okay. But garments, no way.
I don't know. But I'm always trying to think of ways to support the boyfriend sweater curse. But I don't know why, because, child.
Maybe a hat. Maybe a pom-pom for a hat he already has.
not gonna. I don't see someone getting a sweater out of me. Is that awful?
Although I do know someone who is spinning the yarn to make a sweater for her husband.
How many years have they been married?
There are like 4 children in.
I feel like if I gave you 4 children, I don't know you a sweater. But that's really sweet.
I think that's really sweet, though. I think that's kind of wonderful.
I'm like, you done got what you're getting. But yeah, how did we even end up on the boyfriend sweater?
I don't know. It's always on your mind. Because sometimes, we'll be watching a movie. And
I'm like, what if?
What if? And I'm like,
I wonder about these things. You know what really triggered recently? I watched a movie maybe 2 years ago about a girl who found a genie, but the genie had a caveat. You get your 3 wishes, but then the genie kills you. And so I was thinking about ways to get around that. And then, because she did a stupid thing with her last wish. And I was like, that's not what you should have done. But that got me thinking about how to get around curses. And yeah.
Well, there you go.
So now it's just like always on my mind. And because I'm always crocheting, the boyfriend sweater curse comes back again and again.
It does. It does.
What if? Yeah.
I think I told you guys I'm reading Foundation right now. And
is someone cursed?
No.
Okay.
But it feels a little cursed because it's like, I think I was talking to people about this on Twitter because it's like I've opened a racist, misogynist time capsule. It was amazing.
Are you surprised?
I am. You know what? I know it's an old book. So, things that were just not even a thought were just commonplace. It's just like, just the dismissive way they discuss women when women come up at all. So far, I quite literally haven't seen a woman on this planet. You would think that there aren't any. The only time women are mentioned is as an appendage to men. And it's like, oh, well, the people who are actually working on this project are men. But, there's women and children somewhere.
We've been talking for a minute. Oh. It's all the foolishness. But we're not going to get into right now what people mean by the term classic. Because I feel like there's a whole lot baked into that.
There are no people of color anywhere.
Isaac Asimov's Foundation is a classic sci-fi novel. And I'm like, oh, is it though? Okay.
But you know what? I am wondering if when I was a kid, I kind of grew up on hard science fiction, if I would have noticed at that point. Because that's the same world I grew up in, where women were over here, Black people were nowhere to be seen, unless they were members of my family. And now it's kind of really hitting, especially when I had just watched this other vision of Foundation that, there's every kind of person. Women speak and make decisions.
You would see it, but not question it as a choice and not realize that it was deliberate on the part of the author to represent things in the way that they have. So I think, as you get older and you just know more about the world, then you realize, oh, wait a minute, that was like the plan. Okay.
Yeah. And it only came up online because someone had posted a letter that their father got when he was given an offer of employment at some university. I forget which one, but it was a major college. And he was invited to become an assistant professor there. And the second paragraph was all about how they were glad his wife was so pretty and that she was really going to add to the atmosphere of the place. And I was like, that's a lawsuit now. That's like a lawsuit from the dude getting the job and a lawsuit separately from the wife. Yes.
What year is this?
1955. And it brought foundation to mind because I think it was written in like 48, 47 when the first edition came out. So it was just a few years after this. And some people even pointed out, and I had forgotten about this because I had taken a typing class in high school, but the man who dictated the letter, his initials were at the bottom, and how you used to punctuate that was the person who is the mind speaking of in the letter. Their initials are in all capital letters. Then there's a colon, and then the typist's initials are in lowercase next to it. So some woman had to type this nonsense after it was dictated to her or written out for her. I was like, wow. So I was thinking about it, and it was just kind of amazing. I really do feel like I'm looking into a time capsule, and this is the time that some people want to drag us back to. I'm like,
want to or are?
They're trying, but nah, I'm digging my heels in. I'm like, no, I stay right here. But if you guys get a minute, it would be an interesting compare and contrast to read the old book.
You weren't expecting that when you saw the show.
No, I wasn't.
She was like, oh, I think I want to read this novel. Because sometimes that happens, right? You see an adaptation, and you're like, oh, yeah, let me check out the source. Yeah. And I happen to have it. So I was like, oh, here's Foundation. Or it's a trilogy. So I gave her the first book in the trilogy. And
I was like,
surprise.
But that's the casual. It's just so casual. Oh, I don't really have that many people following me. Oh, you're counting the women and children? Like, it's so dismissive. Okay, it's so dismissive. And in all of space, this is a galactic empire spanning an entire galaxy. And there are no women of any note.
You know what? You need a palate cleanser after this. Read some Sherry S. Tepper.
I'm going to have to read The Gate to Women's Country again.
That's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation. Yes.
But
yes, but if you
Sherry S. Tepper, The Gate to Women's Country.
Yes.
Check it out.
Yes. Please do. I might need to cleanse my palate with some Tepper. But yeah. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. I'm still working on my projects. I'm coming in on the home stretch on my shawl. The tip is getting narrower and narrower. Hallelujah. I can't wait to wear it. And I think I'm done for today. How about you?
Yeah.
Oh, please like and subscribe. Our mom would really be happy.
Yeah.
And my
There's
niece
something with a bell too.
Yes, yes. Ring the bell. Thing. My niece told me about that. She goes, "You gotta ask to ring the bell." Yes. Yes. Leave us a like if you can. That would be great. And you know what we should talk about and think about creating a giveaway or two.
We might philosophically opposed to giveaways, but if Lisa wants to do it, I will.
Thank you. Anyway, have a good week, everybody. Thanks for sharing this time with us. Bye-bye.
Ciao.